Have you ever found yourself tempted or challenged in some way in a decision that might change your life? I know I have. I remember my long discernment about priesthood that progressed from law school to law practice to a decision to enter a religious community, and then I ran smack into a wall that stopped me and tempted my faith and my whole discernment of priesthood. I think for the first time in my life I questioned, what was I doing? Who is God? And what is this thing called a vocation anyway? Had I been fooled all this time? Did I create this in my own head? And while I wasn't in the desert for 40 days, and I don't know if the devil had anything to do with it, but for about 6 months, I wrestled with my faith and what God was calling me to do next, if God was calling me at all. What saw me through it, though I didn't name it as such at the time, is noted at the beginning of the gospel story we hear today. Filled with the Holy Spirit, it says, Jesus returned from the Jordan River, where he had just been baptized, and was led by the Spirit into the desert for 40 days. The Holy Spirit equipped Jesus to face these temptations. The same Spirit that comes upon us at baptism and confirmation. It is that Spirit that moved Jesus directly to the Word, the shield that the devil could not penetrate. One does not live by bread alone. God alone shall you serve. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. In Deuteronomy, the Israelites were instructed to bring their first fruits to the Lord in thanksgiving that he had led their ancestors out of oppression and slavery, then out of the desert and into a promised land. When we're in the spiritual desert, or in that dark place inside us where we can't always hear the Spirit, we can fall prey to 1,000 other voices that sound attractive and interesting and can distract us from what we know is right. That can be slavery too, right? Because it robs us of our true freedom. Today, the Lord still leads us out of slavery, and the many forms of it, like the many things that can become an addiction to distract us from hearing the voice of God. Alcohol, other drugs, the internet, pornography, greed, hate. Even greed and hate can become an addiction. Some social media has become an addiction for many, and it is wreaking havoc in our country and our world. So many ways that we may fall to those 3 temptations: to do what we want, to worship what gives us power, and to demand physical proof before we believe in God at all. St. Paul says, Christ is the end, the goal of the law. As we grow and mature in faith, the Spirit leads us to him and to actions that affirm our faith in him, from bringing the first fruits of the harvest to the church and to the poor and to the vulnerable, to proclaiming him with our lives. Paul says that those who confess with the mouth that Jesus is Lord will be saved. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Is that all I must do? Remember that during the times Paul was saying that, it was a hazardous thing to do. You could be killed for it. That means we must put our lives, sometimes our reputations, on the line when we follow the way of Jesus Christ. At the end of the gospel story that we heard, the devil takes Jesus up to the parapet of the temple in Jerusalem, and he refuses to test God from the parapet. Rather, he will show his trust and obedience from the cross in Jerusalem, the place where he will fully realize his destiny. Those 6 months I wrestled in the desert before I finally entered seminary was not the end of temptation, but the beginning of a way of trust in listening to the Spirit that drove Jesus to face his temptations. And the desert of Lent is holy because it pushes us to do the same. Together we make the journey, so that even when alone, we can carry the cross.